the first chapter, laws of motion. Now, in this chapter, we are going to study some concepts related with the motion. These concepts are uh, motion, acceleration, distance and displacement, speed and velocity, acceleration, Newton's laws of motion, and Newton's equation of motion. And also we are going to study the some concepts, the uniform acceleration, non-uniform acceleration, with the help of graphs. These are the points related with this chapter and the concept motion. Now first we we have to know what is mean by the motion. We see the objects and sense the motion. For example, the flight of bird, the stationary train, leaves flying through air, a stone lying on a hill. From these examples, mm, some examples, in some example, we says that the object is in motion, and in some examples, we says that the object is at rest or stationary. That is the flight of bird, fly, leaves flying through air. These are the examples of motion. In this case, we says the birds are moving, the leaves are moving. But in next examples, the train is stationary. A stone is lying on a hill. They have a rest position. They does not have motion. And we call that when the object changes its position, then it is in motion. But instead of this, there is one concept related to the motion, that a motion is relative concept. आपण या प्रकरणामध्ये गतिविषयक नियम हा अभ्यासायचा आहे. पण त्यामध्ये एखादी वस्तू गतिमान आहे असं आपण कधी म्हणतो, तर जेव्हा वस्तू तिची जागा बदलते तेव्हा त्या वस्तूला आपण गतिमान असं म्हणतो, आणि ती जागा बदलत नाही त्यावेळी ती वस्तू स्थिर आहे असं आपण म्हणतो. पण ही गोष्ट पाहत असताना आणखीन एक बाब गतीविषयी विचारात घ्यावी लागते. ती बाब कोणती आहे, तर गती ही संकल्पना सापेक्ष आहे. अ मोशन इज रिलेटिव्ह. हे पहिल्यांदा समजून घेतल्यानंतर मग तुम्ही वस्तू गतिमान आहे किंवा स्थिर आहे याच्याविषयी परफेक्ट असं स्पष्टीकरण देऊ शकता. आपण जे बोलतो ते स्वतःच्या दृष्टिकोनातून बघतो, पण गती ही सापेक्ष म्हणजे काय, तर बघणाऱ्याच्या दृष्टिकोनावर अवलंबून असते. एखादी वस्तू एखाद्याला स्थिर वाटते, पण त्याच वेळी ती वस्तू दुसऱ्याला गतिमान वाटू शकते. आणि असं हे गतीच्या बाबतीत बऱ्याचदा घडत असतं. आणि म्हणून गती ही सापेक्ष संकल्पना आहे असं म्हणतात. द मोशन इज अ रिलेटिव्ह कन्सेप्ट. This means that object may appears to be in motion for some observer, but at the same time that objects appears to be stationary for some other person, and this means that a motion is a relative concept. For example, if we are traveling by bus, then the passengers in bus, they observe a roadside trees are moving in backwards, and the passenger in bus, he is the observer. He also observe the fellow passenger to him. He is at rest position. He is sitting on his position. But instead of this passenger in bus, suppose there is a man, he is at a roadside. He observes that trees are stationary, but bus is moving. Passengers are moving with bus. For a roadside man, a bus and passengers, they are in motion, and roadside trees, they have a stationary position. Thus, from this example, it is clear that the motion, it is with respect to the observer, and therefore it says that the motion is a relative concept. गती ही बघणाऱ्याच्या दृष्टिकोनावर अवलंबून असते. एखादा मनुष्य वाहनातून प्रवास करत असेल तर त्याला रस्त्याकडेची झाडं पळतात असं वाटतं, मागच्या दिशेने ती धावत आहेत असं वाटतं, पण स्वतःच्या जवळ असलेला मनुष्य सहप्रवासी मात्र त्याला स्थिर वाटतो. आणि तेच रस्त्याकडेला एखादा मनुष्य उभा असेल तर त्याला काय वाटतं, तर रस्त्याकडेची झाडं ही स्थिरच आहे, पण बस गतिमान आहे. बसमधले प्रवासी बस सोबत गतिमान आहेत, बसच्याच वेगानं ते गतिमान आहेत असं त्याच्यासाठी वाटत असतं. म्हणजेच काय, तर दोन वेगवेगळ्या व्यक्तींसाठी त्यांच्या दृष्टिकोनातून गती ही संकल्पना अवलंबून राहते आणि म्हणून गतीला सापेक्ष संकल्पना असं म्हणतात. अ मोशन इज रिलेटिव्ह कन्सेप्ट. नाउ फ्रॉम दिस we can say that when we say that the object is in motion, if the position of an object is changing with respect to its surroundings, then the object is in motion. जेव्हा एखादी वस्तू तिची जागा सभोवतालच्या दृष्टिकोनातून बदलत असते, बघणाऱ्याच्या दृष्टिकोनातून जागा बदलत असते, तेव्हा ती वस्तू गतिमान आहे असं म्हणतात. If an object is changing with respect to surroundings, then it is says that the object is in motion. And if the object does not changes its position with respect to surroundings, then it is at rest position or it is stationary. जेव्हा एखादी वस्तू बघणाऱ्याच्या दृष्टिकोनातून जागा बदलत नसते, तेव्हा मात्र ती वस्तू स्थिर आहे असं म्हटलं जातं. Now we are going to study the next concept, distance and displacement. There are two concepts, the distance and displacement related with the motion. डिस्टन्स याचा अर्थ आपण अंतर असं म्हणतो आणि डिस्प्लेसमेंटला विस्थापन असं म्हणतो. दोन्हीचं मोजमाप करत असताना आपण मोजमाप मात्र एकच करतो, दोन्हीसाठी आपण अंतरच मोजतो. मग ते मीटरमध्ये असेल, सेंटीमीटरमध्ये असेल, किलोमीटरमध्ये असेल, अंतरच मोजतो आपण, एक समान एकक वापरतो थोडक्यात. पण तरी सुद्धा डिस्टन्स आणि डिस्प्लेसमेंट ह्या दोन वेगवेगळ्या कन्सेप्ट सांगितलेल्या आहेत. असं का आहे, हा भाग आपण इथं अभ्यासायचा आहे. नाउ देर इज वन ऍक्टिव्हिटी. इन दिस ऍक्टिव्हिटी यू कॅन ऑब्झर्व सम डिफरन्स बिटवीन डिस्टन्स अँड नाउ द क्वेश्चन नंबर 1, measure the distance between points A and B in different ways as shown in figure 1.1a. Now in this figure, this is the point A. This is point A and this is point B. We have to measure the distance between A and B in different ways. We can measure this distance by the in this way, we can measure in this way, we can measure in this way, we can measure in this way. In many different ways we can measure this distance. Now the next question, measure this distance along the dotted line. Now in the next activity it is given that we have to measure this distance along the dotted line A to B. A to B. Now, which distance is correct according to you and why? If you measure the distance between A to B on this dotted line, it will be the minimum distance, and all other paths between A to B, by any way these measures will be larger than A to B. This is the difference. Then the question is that which distance is correct according to you and why? If we have a minimum distance, then the distance measured on dotted line, it will be correct. But if we have a minimum distance, and thus there will be difference in our answer. आता इथं ए पासून बी पर्यंत शॉर्टेस्ट हे कमीत कमी अंतर आहे आणि मग कमीत कमी अंतर पाहिजे असेल तर ह्या अंतराला आपण बरोबर म्हणू शकू. बाकीची जी अंतर ए पासून बी पर्यंत कुठल्याही मार्गाने मोजलेली आहेत त्यांचं मोजमाप हे नक्कीच ह्या डॉटेड लाईनपेक्षा जास्त भरणार. म्हणजेच काय, तर दोन बिंदूमधलं अंतर मोजत असताना त्याच्यामध्ये सुद्धा वेगवेगळं मोजमाप येऊ शकतं. याचाच अर्थ डिस्टन्स आणि डिस्प्लेसमेंट ह्याच्यामध्ये काहीतरी फरक आहे आणि तो फरक आपल्याला पुढच्या गोष्टीवरून समजावून घ्यायचा आहे. द नेक्स्ट ऍक्टिव्हिटी. In the next activity, there is a Sheetal's home, a Sangeeta's home, and a school. They are at right angle. They are in the position such that they are in right angle triangle. आता शीतलचं घर आहे, संगीताचं घर आहे, शाळा आहे आणि ह्या तीन गोष्टी एकमेकापासून एका राईट अँगल ट्रायंगलच्या बिंदूवरती आहेत असं आपण समजूया. आता त्याच्यामध्ये मी साध्या पद्धतीने समजावून सांगते. समजा ही शीतल संगीताच्या घरी गेली किंवा संगीता ह्या शीतलला म्हणाली की तू माझ्याकडे ये, आपण दोघी मिळून शाळेला जाऊया. मधली तुम्हाला अंतर दिलेली आहेत. शीतलच्या घरापासून संगीताचं घर हे 500 मीटर आहे आणि संगीताच्या घरापासून शाळा 1200 मीटर अंतरावरती आहे. पण काही वेळेस असेही शीतल म्हणू शकते की नको, मी जर सरळ शाळेला गेले तर माझं हे अंतर कमी भरेल. आता हे अंतर कमी का भरेल? If the Sheetal went to the school via Sangeeta's house, then the distance is maximum. It is about 500 meters plus 1200 meters. That is maximum as compared to the distance. It is larger as compared to the distance from Sheetal's house to the school. Because this is the distance in some specific direction. In some specific direction, if we follow the path in some specific direction, then it will be minimum. And minimum distance is called the displacement. Minimum distance followed by the moving object from one point to another point, it is the displacement. And any path followed by the moving object from initial point to finishing final point, it is known as the distance. This is the main difference between distance and displacement. Displacement related with the direction. In the same way, the distance between A to B, it is the smallest distance and therefore it is a displacement. The distance measured from A to B on dotted line, it is the displacement, and all other measurements, these are distances. These are distances, and from that it is clear that the definition of the distance we will give like that. Distance is the length of the actual path traveled by an object in motion while going from one point to another. Distance, पुन्हा एकदा बघा, डिस्टन्सची डेफिनेशन या सगळ्यावरून आपण असं सांगू शकतो की याच्यावरून डिस्टन्स इज द ॲक्च्युअल पाथ traveled by an object in motion while going from one point to another. While going from one point to another. And displacement is the minimum distance between the starting and finishing point. Displacement is the minimum distance between starting and finishing points. And then it is clear that the distance and displacement, these are two different concepts. These related with the motion, but also these are two different concepts. Now we are going to study some points again related to this, that is vector quantity and scalar quantity. In physics, always we study the physical quantities. And physical quantities, this means that the quantities which have measurement, these are known as physical quantities. But all the physical quantities, these are classified in two types, the scalar quantity and vector quantity. म्हणजे आपण भौतिकशास्त्रामध्ये भौतिक राशींचा अभ्यास करतो. मग भौतिक राशी म्हणजे काय? तर ज्यांचं मोजमाप, ज्या राशींचं मोजमाप केलं जातं त्याला भौतिक राशी असं म्हणतात. पण या भौतिक राशींचं दोन प्रकारे वर्गीकरण आहे, सदिश राशी आणि अदिश राशी. मग डिस्टन्स आणि डिस्प्लेसमेंट, अंतर आणि विस्थापन, याच्या बाबतीत पण ह्या दोन गोष्टी लागू पडतात. आता याच्यामध्ये मग व्हेक्टर क्वांटिटी म्हणजे काय, स्केलर क्वांटिटी म्हणजे काय समजावून घ्या. दस व्हेक्टर म्हणजे सदिश राशी, स्केलर म्हणजे अदिश राशी. व्हॉट इज मीन बाय व्हेक्टर क्वांटिटी? अ फिजिकल क्वांटिटी विच इज डिस्क्राइब्ड completely by its magnitude as well as its direction is called vector quantity. A physical quantity which is described completely by its magnitude as well as its direction is called a vector quantity. And scalar quantity, a physical quantity which is described completely by its magnitude only, it is called the scalar quantity. A physical quantity which is described completely by its magnitude only is called a scalar quantity. And then we know that, then we come to point that the distance, it does not, it can be completely described with magnitude only, therefore distance is scalar quantity. But displacement, to follow the displacement there is consideration of direction, it can be completely described with the direction and magnitude, therefore displacement is vector quantity. In the same way, mass, temperature, these are scalar quantities, but the force, displacement, velocity, these are vector quantities. Thus, we can say that the distance, it is measured, the SI unit for distance is meter, SI unit for displacement is also meter, but there are some difference in distance and displacement. That is, the difference points are, the distance is the length of actual path traveled by an object in motion while going from one point to another, and displacement is the minimum distance between the starting and finishing points. Distance is uh, always, distance is a scalar quantity and displacement is vector quantity. If the motion is along straight line, then the distance, the magnitude of distance and displacement are same. If the motion is along straight line, then magnitude of distance and displacement are same. But if the motion is not along a straight line, at that time distance is greater than displacement. Distance is always greater than displacement, and displacement, the magnitude of displacement is smaller than the distance if the motion is not along the straight line. This is about the concept distance and displacement. Now in the next part we will study about the velocity and speed. There are also some difference in speed and velocity. It will study on the next part.